Quickly learn how to use ON1 Photo RAW with this beginner-friendly tutorial. I won't cover everything, but you'll learn enough to make beautiful photos. When you first open up ON1 Photo RAW, you might see this learning hub and this quick start guide, which gives you a few shortcuts to the ON1 video tutorials on their website, as well as some tips. But I'm just going to close this here. Now we'll go over the main interface of ON1 Photo RAW. Right now I'm in the Browse section under the Browse panel, which shows all my folders. This is my dedicated ON1 folder with some sample images for this video tutorial. This is my Mac Finder. For some of you, it could be the Windows Explorer. Keep in mind this shows all the folders, including non-image folders such as your documents. On the right hand side, we have Brilliance AI, which is an AI editing tool. We'll go over that later on. Then we have the metadata of these images. So if I want, I can see the EXIF information as well, such as the exposure, ISO, and the camera model. If I just shrink this or minimize this, I can also go to the keyword list, and then I can apply keywords to this photo. These are some pre-saved keywords that I've already used. And if you want to manually add keywords, you just go back to the metadata section, and then you can add keywords here. Now, if you want to change the size of these thumbnails, you can click here and change or slide the slider here. I can also change the view of the grid to single view. I can also go to the film strip here and view the film strip. If I go back to the grid view and I double click on the photo, it goes to single view. Now I'm going to go back to grid view here, and here are the presets, and I can apply presets if I want, but I'm not a preset type of guy. And then there's the catalog. The catalog is better if you have a large library of photos and you don't want to browse or view all the folders that are non-image folders. And the catalog also helps with performance when you're editing. So we'll discuss the catalog later on this video. Now the magic happens in the edit section here. And this is where you'll be editing and making your image adjustments. As I said, I don't like presets here, so I'm going to minimize it or hide it by clicking right here. Now we have some specialty tools for editing, such as the crop tool, and then there's the healing brush tool right here. And then we have the main tools on the right hand side, including the develop, and then we have the tone and color. And we'll go over some of these other tools later on in this video tutorial. The ON1 Photo RAW catalog, it's sometimes called the library or image library by professional photographers. And my catalog currently doesn't have any folders. So the browse section, remember this ON1 folder I have, I'm going to add it to my catalog by going here, clicking on the plus sign, and then selecting my ON1 catalog, or my ON1 folder in this case. And it's going to give you a few options, including creating a preview size, scanning how often there are changes to your catalog, and adding keyword AI to it, or adding keywords automatically to your photos. Usually embedded is the smallest size for the preview, including in ON1 Photo RAW, and it's usually the most sufficient or the most practical because it takes up the least amount of space, or it takes the least amount of space. But I'm going to stick with standard, which is the largest, because I'm going to be doing some zooming in and out. So I want better performance. And the scan frequency, it checks for changes in your catalog. So if you add a few photos to it later on, it'll check for changes to it, and it'll automatically create a preview size for it and add keywords to it. And the basic keyword AI, which will automatically add keywords to it, is usually sufficient. So I'll just click on OK. And then it can take a few seconds or a few minutes to process the catalog, especially if you have a big library. If you want to check the status of your catalog, you just go here, click on this folder icon with the heart, and it'll show the catalog progress. So my previews are up to date and my keywords are up to date. And remember, if you want to add keywords automatically, you can go here to the metadata and automatically add keywords. But here's the AI keywords that were automatically added to my images. There's a few additional ways to sort or filter photos in ON1 Photo RAW. One of them being is albums. Right now I don't have any albums, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a few photos. I'll select this photo and then shift click this photo here. So I have 4 photos selected. I can click on the plus sign and I'm going to create an album. I'll label it my first album. And you can see this option here, add selected items. So I'll be able to add these 4 photos to my first album. So I'll click on it, click on OK. Let's click on my first album. And as you can see, I have the 4 photos here. I'll go back to my catalog. I can also drag photos into my album. And you can notice there's like an error or bug on the interface. So if I select this photo here and drag it around, you can see it's selected 2, but it's actually 1. You can see the 2 in the white font and the red background. That seems like a bug in the system. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it represents the count. So another thing I can do is I can click on this photo. I can shift click it and then drag it around to drag it here if I want. And now it shows correctly. It shows 4 photos. So I'll click here or drag it there. And let's see. So these 4 photos were selected or were put into the album correctly, and there's no duplicates. So I do believe there's a issue or a bug with the count when you're selecting photos. Another way to add photos is by clicking or right clicking on them and then going to add album, and then I can add it to my first album if I want. Now, there's a few other options to view or organize your photos, and that's being the text, attribute, faces, and metadata. So for example, if I go to the metadata, I click on it, and then I go to object type, go to camera, and let's say I want an ISO that is greater than, let's say 2000. I'll press enter. And these are my photos with an ISO of 2000 or higher, actually greater than 2000. I'll uncheck this or reset it. Uncheck this and go to none. Okay, go back to the top. Now, another thing I can do is I can add tags to these photos. So one of the tags being the star rating. I can give this a 4. I can give this a 1. I can give this a 5. Another thing I can do is give it a color label. I can give this a yellow. I'll give this a green. I'll give this a purple. And I can also like the photos. So you can see the heart sign. If I click on it once, the heart is filled or it's favorited. If I click on it again, it means it's rejected. So I don't want that photo. And if I click on it again, it's neutral or the default. So I'll like these. I'll like this. This is already liked. This is rejected. And then I can go to these attributes and sort them. So I can sort them by the color. Blue, I think I had blue. No, I didn't. Purple. I had purple, green, and some that I liked. And these are the photos that I liked that have a color label and a color label that's at least, let's say, 5. If I select 5, this should be gone away. So I'll select 5 and it's gone away. So I'll just reset this and click on none. Another thing I can do is create smart albums. So the way to create smart albums could be a little bit tricky at first. So I'll go here and you can see there's no save new smart album option, but I'll go to catalog. I'll undo the metadata because I don't want metadata. And let's say I want everything that's at least 3 stars or higher that has a color label of yellow and purple. I'll go back here, click on save new smart album. I'll just label it smart 1 and I'll click on save. So if we go to this smart album here, you can see anything that has yellow or purple with a star rating of at least 3, it should be added to this. So let's automatically add some photos to this smart album. I'll go back to my main catalog. I'll click here, give it a 3, give it a yellow. This one I'll give it a 5. I'll give it a red and it should not be in my smart album. This one I'll give it a 5 and I'll give it a purple. And let's see my smart album now. So it automatically added some photos to my smart album. So this saves a lot of time, so you don't have to keep dragging photos out of your regular album. Instead, the smart album automatically organizes and filters your photos. So it's pretty cool to have in ON1 Photo RAW. Usually I crop an image at the end of my photo editing session, but I just want to get it out of the way and show it to you right now. Currently, I have the hand and zoom tool selected, which allows me to zoom in on the image as well as pan around. I'll just click it again and it'll zoom out. I'll select the crop tool, which is located right here. And now you can see this overlay, which is the rule of thirds. I can change the overlay by going right here. I can select golden spiral, and I'll just go back to the rule of thirds. Here's the aspect ratio if you want to change the aspect of your crop. Here's the resolution, the unit of measurement, and some leveling tools. Now you can see this horizon, it's not leveled here. So I'll click on this level tool. I'll click and hold here on the horizon and drag this line all the way to the end, and then release the mouse. And now the image is level. I'll give it a simple crop by going to the top, clicking on the edge, and just moving it down. I can also rotate it by going right here until you see the circular arrow, and then I can just click and drag to rotate it. I'm going to accept the crop by clicking on this blue arrow, or I can press enter. Now it goes back to the hand tool right here. I can zoom in here, take a look at the image better. I can move this slider to the right to zoom in more. And you can see this image, it looks pretty soft. And there's a lot of noise and it's not that sharp. So in the noise and sharpening tool, which is right here, I'm going to decrease the noise or the luminance noise by moving this luminance slider to the right. And I can add more detail back to the image because it looks a lot more soft, but it doesn't make a big difference. So one thing I can do is go to the sharpening tool and increase the amount of the sharpen. And I want to make sure it doesn't increase or add more artifacts to the image. So I can use this threshold slider to create a mask or show where the sharpening gets impacted. If you really want to see the threshold, click and hold the Option or Alt button or key while you're dragging it. And now you can see where it's going to get sharpened. So I'll just sharpen the edges and that looks good. So here you can see the before by clicking and holding. So this is the before and this is the after. Before and after. I can also use the keyboard shortcut, the backslash, to see the before, and I'll depress it to see the after. Now, this image still looks pretty soft. There's a better way in ON1 Photo RAW for noise reduction and sharpening, and that's by using No Noise AI and Tack Sharp AI. And the best way for me to demonstrate that is I'm going to just zoom in here and I'm going to click on both. This is going to add no noise as well as Tack Sharp AI. So I'll click on both here. And this is an AI tool and you can see the before and after. So it looks a lot more sharp here. I can make minor adjustments if I would like, but I'll just keep it on this and click on apply. And once I click on apply, it does take a few seconds to process this no noise and Tack Sharp AI. So one thing about the no noise and Tack Sharp AI is once you apply it, it gets locked. So you can't click on the before and after to view the noise reduction and the sharpening. However, you can already tell if you remember the noise reduction and the sharpening or the edge sharpening is a lot better. So I'll just zoom out here and this image looks pretty good with the crop and the noise is reduced and it looks somewhat sharpened. But the color looks beautiful. I took this at the equator in the Galapagos Islands. You can see the top of this building is curved due to lens distortion, and we can quickly correct that in ON1 Photo RAW by clicking on the lens correction right here, and you can see the top has been leveled out. So if I uncheck this, here's the before, and here's the after. ON1 Photo RAW was able to pull up the correct metadata information and automatically apply the correct lens brand as well as the lens focal range or model. If ON1 Photo RAW is unable to detect the lens, you'll have to manually select it. And if your lens is not available, you can manually correct the distortion by using this slider. Brilliance AI automatically adjusts tone and color in your image with AI. So if I click here on the Brilliance AI tool, I'm just going to click right here. It's going to automatically apply some AI adjustments. You can see the before and after, before and after. If I want, I can change the overall strength of the Brilliance AI by adjusting this amount slider. And if I double click on it, it'll go back to 100. I can also adjust the tone only, or the luminance or brightness value, or I can change or adjust the color if I would like. And sometimes Brilliance AI, it'll automatically apply local adjustments. And local adjustments is like selecting the sky or selecting the water or the building, something like that. But here it didn't select any adjustments automatically. So that's okay. And now there's some refine tools here if you would like. And one of the main things that Brilliance AI does is in the tone and color section, you can see all the adjustments it made. It increased the exposure, it increased the contrast, decreased the highlights, and so forth. And if I go down here to temperature and tint, these have been adjusted, including the saturation, which has been decreased slightly, and the vibrance has been increased slightly. And all these Brilliance AI adjustments, I can adjust it if I would like. So with the highlights, I can increase the highlights, put more contrast, and I can brighten up the shadows a little bit more. And one thing about ON1 Photo RAW is it's non-destructive. So any adjustments you make, it's not going to impact or adjust the original file. That includes RAW files and JPEG files. And once you're happy with the adjustments, you can go to another photo and select it for editing in the browse section, or you can select and press this accept button. Now, and then there's these reset buttons. This resets all settings, this circular arrow, and this X button, it resets the edits just for this current editing session. I took this photo of this cat in Flores, Guatemala, sleeping or lying on this billiards table. I already applied a basic adjustment with Brilliance AI. It's very subtle. I'll uncheck this radio box here, and this is the before. And if I check it again, here's the after. But I want to remove these screws, these distracting screws right here. So I'll go to the healing brush tool. I'll make sure it's selected. There's a few other brush options that you may want to check out later on. And here's the brush size. And here's the feather, which helps with the transition to make the photo look a little bit more natural. And the opacity is the transparency. So I'm going to go and brush over this, but I want to decrease the size of the brush. So I'll press left square bracket as the keyboard shortcut. The right square bracket is to increase the size. And then I'll just paint over here. And if I move my mouse away, you can see it did a pretty good job. And now you can see this red box. The red box is the source and the green box is the sample, where it's taking a sample of the image or pixels to duplicate this area. I can also paint over here. And then there's this option right here. This one might be a little bit more tricky. So I need to remove the sample and make it look a little bit better. And let's see here. That looks good. Here's the before and here's the after. So it looks a lot better without the screws. And you would do something like this when you're removing dust spots or rain spots from your image as well. This photo is unedited, but I want to make some minor adjustments to it and bring more focus to this area by darkening the bottom left corner as well as the top right corner, add a little bit of saturation. And let's see if we can increase or put more focus on the middle. So what I'm going to do is use masking or local adjustments. And the masking tool is right here, but it's grayed out because I need to go to the local adjustments panel and click on add adjustment. Now the masking tool is selected and I want to make sure I'm on the brush, on the masking brush. And the size looks okay, feather at 100. Opacity, I'll increase it to 100. And paint is painting with white. So you can see here the black part on the mask here and here. That means nothing's going to be applied to it. You can see here the exposure is -1. So if I change it, nothing applies to it because I need to paint in the mask. Once I paint it in, you'll see this area a little bit more white. So I'm going to start painting right here. And now you can see the exposure or the negative exposure being applied. And now you can see the mask here in the bottom left corner here and here in the local adjustment. It shows white. I can show you the overlay of the mask by clicking right here and going to the red overlay. And you can see I missed this part here. And I'll show you the grayscale overlay. So I'm just going to turn off the overlay. And you can see this transition, it's pretty hard. One way I can correct it is by increasing the exposure again. Or another thing I can do is decrease the opacity, which is the transparency, to about, let's say, 40. And then I can start painting this area and paint it a little bit more, make the transition look a little bit more smoother, decrease the opacity a little bit more, and that looks good. And now I can make minor adjustments to the tone by increasing the exposure a little bit here. That looks good. I can decrease the highlights. I can also go to saturation, decrease the saturation a little bit, decrease the vibrance. So now once I go to the local adjustment, I can click on the radio box to see the before and after. Before and after. And actually I want to increase the exposure a little bit more just to make it look a little bit more natural. I'm going to close this box right here. And now I'm going to apply another adjustment to the sky. So I'm going to click on add adjustment. This time I'm going to go to the gradient mask. On the preset, I'll click on none. Make sure it's on gradient, the shape, opacity at 100. That looks good. And then I'm just going to create a gradient right here. And you can see on the mask where it's being selected. I'll put the overlay back on. Actually, I'll go to the red overlay and you can see where it's being impacted. I'm going to rotate it by clicking right here and rotating it. And that looks good. And actually this mask is backward. So I'm going to click on this icon right here to invert it. I'm going to uncheck the overlay. And I'm going to reset these adjustments. I don't want this negative exposure to start off with. So now I'm going to go and correct or adjust the sky a little bit by decreasing the temperature, make it a little bit more blue. I'm going to go to the saturation. I'll actually increase the saturation. I'll increase the vibrance, decrease the temperature a little bit more, and make it look a little bit more cool. So I'll close this and let's see the before and after. Before and after. Now another thing I can do is I can add another adjustment, and this time I'm going to select the gradient mask. I don't like these presets. Actually, I'll keep it on a strong preset, strong vignette. I'm going to use a center gradient or a radial gradient. I'll close this and I'll just click here. Click here. Now this is the feather. This area, this outer circle or outer sphere is the feather. Now let's see that the automatic adjustment is -1 exposure, which is too much. I think I'll keep it like that. Let's take a look at it. I'll decrease the highlights actually. So remember, it's everything that's around here that's being impacted, the white area in this mask. Let me show the grayscale. So this white area is what's being impacted. And that looks okay. Click on the hand tool. So let's see the before and after. Before and after. Of course, I can make better adjustments to make a little bit more focus on this area. You can see the radial gradient, it's a little bit harsh right here. but this gives you a basic idea of how the masking tool works. So another thing I can do to select the sky instead of using this gradient mask is using sky AI or AI masking. So with this gradient mask that I have selected, I'm just going to delete it by clicking on this X here. So now it's been deleted, and I'm going to add another local adjustment. And this time I'm going to go to Mask AI, and I'm going to go to the sky. So you can see I can select the sky. I can select the mountain. Sometimes it doesn't select it correctly. I can select the water, but I'll just stick with the sky. I'll click on apply. And now you can see the mask that was applied. I do need to make some adjustments to it because it is a little bit wanky. If I look at the overlay, it's a little bit messed up. So I'll just paint over here, increase the opacity, paint here, and that looks pretty good. This looks better. So now the mask is improved. I'll click on the overlay button again, and I'm just going to reset these adjustments, and I can make the same type of corrections. I'll decrease the temperature, increase the saturation, vibrance, and this looks a little bit more wacky, so I need to correct this by increasing the midtones a little and maybe the exposure slightly. So that's another way of masking using Mask AI. ON1 Photo RAW has a few AI masking tools. This photo is unedited. I took it in Patagonia during the sunrise. And ON1 Photo RAW has a few cool filters that you can apply to an image to make it pop. So you can find the filters in the effects panel, and you can click on add filter. And there's quite a few filters, so I won't be able to cover them. The main one most people will use is the vignette. But I'm going to go to the curves tool, and I'm going to color grade this image a little bit better. So you're not expected to understand the curves tool entirely. It's another course in itself, so make sure to subscribe. But I'm going to go to the green channel here. I'm going to decrease the midtones and add a little bit of magenta. And then I'm going to go to the blue channel and increase the midtones and add a little bit of blue. So you can see with these subtle adjustments, let me just decrease the midtones on the blue a little bit more. That looks better. So you can see with some subtle adjustments using the tone curve filter, you can make this image look a lot better. Here's the before and here's the after. If you want to export a photo or a group of photos, just select them and then right click with your mouse and go to the export option. And now you have the export panel with a few different presets. You can select the destination folder, what to do after you export. You can also select the file type. Most people would select JPEG or TIFF. And if you do select JPEG, make sure it's at a quality of 100. You can select the color profile. You can resize the image if you want. Usually long edge is pretty good for landscape orientation photos. And then you can select the maximum length of the photo. You can also do some output sharpening. And you can also add a watermark and customize it with your own text. Or you can import your own logo right here. And other than that, if you guys enjoyed this video, you know what to do. And as always, live easy, sleep breezy, and stay lovely.